Welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Roberson. Today we have a full-size offering from Infiniti, and it is the 2013 QX56. Now the first thing you're going to notice on the QX56 is it has stage presence, and I'm referring to its overall size. Now by the numbers, it has a 121-inch wheelbase and 208 inches overall. Now where that falls in the full-size segment, it's basically falling short of the Suburban, which measured in about 225 inches, but bigger than both the Tahoe and Sequoia by just a couple clicks. Now if you go by the overall other numbers, it's going to measure over 6 feet tall and over 6 feet wide. So it definitely delivers full-size amenities, and you can definitely tell that just at one glance. Now if you watched Road Warrior before, you obviously know that our opinion is bigger is better when it comes to SUVs, and obviously that is the case here. Now bigger doesn't necessarily translate at the fuel economy, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But looking at outside here, you obviously see pretty much straight lines, but that typical Infiniti front end with a little bit of sculpting and rounded edges. Now this vehicle is in stark comparison to that of the Suburban and Tahoe, which has really gone to kind of 80s throwback with straight edges and squared lines. This kind of morphs the two and is truly striking when you see it, and has a lot of Infiniti architecture that you'll find throughout. Now one little accent I love is this little porthole right here, which is operational, allows that engine to kind of breathe that heat out of there. Now interestingly enough, on like the Range Rover for the coming year, they've actually dropped this kind of stereotypical porthole on their vehicle. So keeping it here I think is nice, considering other models are dropping it. Now this is the Touring Edition, and what you're going to notice that instead of the standard 20-inch wheels, they're going to be 22-inch ones here. Now looking down the side of the QX56 is the primary part of this vehicle that keeps it from looking like a beluga whale. And what I'm referring to is keeping these kind of side haunches nice and tight to the vehicle. I mean, you're already over 6 feet wide, so there's just not room to really flow out here, and I'm glad they didn't. Now if you keep looking around, this obviously is a black nice exterior with a lot of chrome accents around the windows, on the doors, and of course the portholes we already talked about. Now down low you have a nice step rail for ingress, and what I love is that this one is kind of tucked in so it doesn't flow outside the vehicle. Now that is very helpful for any side damage you could possibly happen if you get too close to things, but really kind of keeps you from tripping, because once those doors open you easily can access that rail, so there's no real reason to kind of protrude it out. Now looking at the front end, this is to me typical Infiniti-esque, because it has that nice curved front hood line that you're going to see on other sport SUVs and their sedan lineup. Now looking at the headlight assembly, these are intuitive headlights, which means as you turn, they're going to turn and illuminate well ahead of you getting into that curve. So they're smart and think before you do. Now other accent pieces up here, of course, is that huge chrome grille that it lets people know that this is an Infiniti, especially if they don't even notice this nice hood line that really screams Infiniti. Now we're all familiar with technology on the inside of a vehicle, but rarely do we take a moment to actually look and see where it begins, and on this vehicle it's right up front and center. Now what I'm referring to, of course, are the sensors, and what you're going to notice is the little ones right up here, and that's for your kind of slow speeds in the parking lot when you're maneuvering in and out of tight spots. Is of course going to relate to that on the inside and let you know how close you are. Now one little area you may not be familiar with is this kind of rectangular cutout area right here, and in layman's terms that is basically the radar on this vehicle. It's going to alert you to anything happening on the front of this vehicle, and what I'm referring to is, for instance, the cruise control is adaptive, which means when you're at highway speeds and you're in traffic, it will set the cruise control, and when traffic slows, it will slow. When it speeds up, it'll speed up. Now another nice thing I love, of course, is it's also going to alert you when anything dynamic happens, like a vehicle braking and you're going too fast. It's going to let you know long before you've even realized that's going on the highway. Now in a vehicle this big, there's inherently going to be blind spots you just can't avoid, but they've actually fixed that with the Around View Monitor system. Now what that encompasses is 4 strategically placed cameras, one on the bottom of each mirror, one up front and one in the back, and they're 360 kind of view, a wide angle that projects down and gives you kind of a bird's eye of what's going on. Now what's great, of course, that's going to pick up on any small objects. As you're in reverse, you can kind of peek at that monitor and see anything that's in the way, especially like small children or other pets, things obviously that could be in harm's way. Now they've coupled that with the motion detection system, which obviously is going to detect any movement, specifically like cars that are coming from your blind spot that those cameras can't pick up. That motion detection system will alert you and enable you, of course, time to brake. Now, spinning around to the back of the QX56 and the last remaining traditional blind spot on any vehicle, of course on this one they fixed that with the rear mounted backup camera, which gives you a nice clear view, and that of course coupled with the around view is going to give you any indication, of course, if anything is in the way. Now once you go to lift the rear gate, you're going to notice it's a one-touch button. This lift gate of course will rise to the occasion. Now behind the third row there's going to be modest space at around about 16 cubic feet. Now in comparison to a sedan, which starts around about 18 cubic feet, it falls just a hair short. But of course on this vehicle, there's plenty still left to acquire. Now to do that, of course, instead of folding the seats manually on this vehicle, they are a one-touch button. You press that and they fold down. Now this operation does take just a minute, actually takes a lot longer to actually rise. Now once this second row, third rows are folded flat, you can double, possibly even triple your cargo space. Now as for the seating layout, there is dual caption chairs in the second row with a split seat in the third row. Now if you do want to carry as many people as possible, up to 8, you can opt for a bench seat in the second row. Now under the hood, the QX56 comes equipped with the 5.6 liter V8 32 valve engine. Now it's going to deliver 400 horses and 416 foot-pounds of torque. Now that's not bad numbers, but with a gross vehicle weight rating of about more than 7,000 pounds, of course you got to have enough horses under the hood to get this vehicle up and going, and of course it does that just fine. Now one thing to note, with so much weight and the power, one thing that's going to be a drawback is fuel economy, and on this vehicle it is kind of borderline, getting around about 14 to 20 miles per gallon, hopefully averaging somewhere in between. Now if you prefer and you want to tow the big boy toys, this does tow up to around about 8,500 pounds when it is equipped. Now once you climb inside the QX56, you're going to notice that luxury is standard and is not an option. And what I'm referring to is all the premium appointments that is basically expected on any Infiniti model obviously are going to come on it. Now this is the Touring Edition, which means there are a few option upgrades that you'll find, but again that list is very short because pretty much the vehicle comes with everything you possibly want, fully loaded from the start, with just a few minor upgrades for those that really want to add just another hint of premium excess. Now one of those of course is the perforated leather seats that you're going to find throughout. Up front we have the heated and cooled seats, and that's a dial-in system, which means you can make it really cold or really hot with just a simple turn of the dial. Now as for creature comforts for the driver, that's going to be a 10-way power adjustable seat with lumbar support, and for the front passenger it's going to be an 8-way power adjustable seat. Now that's going to allow you to obviously easily fit your comfort, and it's to be expected of course on a premium vehicle. Now there are 2 memory settings for the driver, allowing for different people to set their own comfort, press a button and it goes back into that previous setting. Now the steering wheel is telescoping and it's powered again, so for different drivers, when you press the memory button, even the steering wheel will accommodate and go back to its previously set setting. Now on the dash, of course, you've got the huge LCD screen with the navigation, XM radio, and you'll find the corresponding buttons, and of course it is touch screen, so you can do that or the buttons down below. Now one thing I did notice that there are several knobs placed throughout, and the biggest one being right up front and center that relates to the map. Now one problematic thing for me was the vent control system. Down here is the airspeed. Where I really wanted to change this, it was actually a button down here. So what I would really like to switch is minimize the map system buttonings here and actually overplay the fan control, because I tend to want to actually control the airspeed long before I'm going to control the map. Now as for the other options, there are of course dual zone. Here is actually tri-zone because you have the back seat passengers have their own as well. Those are digital displayed, allowing you to really dial in the specific temperature for front, back and rear seating wherever you sit. Now this vehicle comes equipped with a 7-speed automatic transmission and comes in either 2-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive system, or the 4-wheel drive like we have here. Now that system is somewhat simple. You dial in what you're looking for. It has a snow mode, tow mode, and 4-wheel drive high and low. But pretty much I keep it in auto, allows it to detect its own slippage and put torque where it needs to go. Now of course this is an Infiniti premium model, costing over $70,000+, so I'm not a huge adventurous on a vehicle like this, and it's not really to be expected to drive off-road. This is more for the urban jungle. I don't expect people to really go mudding in a vehicle like this. Now one interesting note is legroom, because you have about 39 inches of space up front, and that's well within reason of comfort. Interestingly enough, when you go to the second row, it actually increases to 41 inches, giving the backseat passengers actually enough comfort to stretch out. Now if you go to the third row, that's going to drop to under 30 inches and about in that kind of par for being just enough space to be comfortable. But across the board, you've got plenty of leg room, and again, the second row is maybe the best spot to sit. Now we talked about convenience earlier with the cargo area where you're able to fold those seats with simply pressing a button. Now when you talk about ingress and egress basically into that third row from the second, you obviously want to have it simple, and they have made that just the case here. What you do, people are getting in, instead of them having to figure out for the first time being in this vehicle, you're able to do it right up here from the captain chair, and all you have to do is simply press the corresponding button right here. It's going to lay flat, flip forward, and allow that ease of ingress to that third row. Once they're in place, that seat obviously is going to lay back down manually, but it's real light, easy, and it's going to go right back into place simply. Now we all love backup cameras, and the only Achilles heel to that is they only work when you're in reverse. If you're in the vehicle and you want to get your bearings before you pull off, the best thing to have is the around view that's on this vehicle. And what that does is in coordination with the LCD screen, and again those cameras that are built in around the vehicle, and it gives you that bird's eye view, allowing you to see all the little places real simply before you even put it in drive or reverse. Even better is the camera on this vehicle is actually out front as well, allowing you to look ahead, because just as going backwards can be dangerous, going forward can do that just the same. Now another safety feature on this vehicle while you're driving is the lane departure and blind spot awareness. Now they work with cameras and sensors more or less to alert you to those areas of safety concern. Now what it does, instead of kind of having on the mirrors like other vehicles, it actually has illuminated light right here. When a vehicle comes up, it's going to discreetly turn on, and more or less as you get used to it, you're going to look to that before you do anything else. Now should you put in your blinker and the vehicle knows there's someone there, it's actually going to give you an audible alarm. Now should you actually proceed to go ahead and make that maneuver, the vehicle is actually going to brake for you, again alerting you to say, hey, I don't think you need to do that. Now in the Q56, the passengers will also get the royal treatment, and I'm referring to the second row specifically, as the legroom is truly abundant here, along with these dual captain chairs that really invite you and have plenty of room. Now they're divided by this huge center console, and combined with the door elbow space, you're really able to find your comfort when you're back here. Now one area that is not standard on this vehicle is the theater system that you see here. Now it comes with dual monitors built into the headrest, the DVD system, and of course 2 wireless headphones and the wireless remote. Now what's great is while all that entertainment is going on back here, the front passenger and driver can actually listen to their own devices and have their own entertainment going on as well. Now another thing to note about the second row, of course, is the comfort, and I'm referring to the reclinability of this seat. Of course, it's like most second rows, there is some ability to relax, and you simply pull this handle and it will go to and fro real simple. Now again, we talked about the ingress to the third row, about the button up front that the driver can press and allows this to electronically flip forward with no problem. Now of course, if you want to do it yourself, that's real easy. You can either do the shoulder handle or this hip handle, and it's simply going to do it in one step. Now once you open this area, it's real easy to get back there. Now again, for the third row, by the numbers on paper, it does not look that accommodating, but once you're back there, it really isn't that bad, as the back of the seat rests really do sculpt and allow you to kind of fit into that third row just fine. But once you're back there, you can easily tumble this back and it really goes back into place quite simply. Now what's most impressive on this vehicle is when you sit right behind the captain's chair, as you'll find it to be agile and nimble and can get in and out of those nooks and crannies that you wouldn't be expecting. Now again, it doesn't take a football field to turn this vehicle around, and it truly will feel half its size once you try to get into those tight spots. Now again, it doesn't hurt that you have the all-around view system that allows you to see those blind spots you otherwise wouldn't see, but really you start to get the confidence level way up on this vehicle when you drive it and realize that you can turn almost on a dime, and you can take this vehicle into places real simply you otherwise didn't think you could. Now that does it for this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Roberson, and we tested out the Infiniti QX56. And one thing we don't want to overlook is its striking beauty from the outside. Again, this is going to be a massive offering when it comes to SUVs, but you don't want to have that beluga well appearance from the outside, and it doesn't do that. And it was a huge head turner wherever we went. Now again, I'd like to thank you for watching, and as always, keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.